So our topic today is beyond mindfulness and Gnostic meditation. So we'd like to discuss and show you how those two topics link together and what is Gnostic meditation. Meditation is often used as a way to achieve spiritual development or to find stillness and harmony in ourselves and to achieve a state of consciousness, a change in our state of consciousness. But many people find that whatever meditation practices they try, they still don't enable us to attain a permanent change to a new state of consciousness. Mindfulness offers a way of becoming still in the present by observing our thoughts without attachment to them or to the outcome of them. Both practices are related to the three levels of I consciousness, that is, operating from the head, the heart, and of action or will, which lead from the self-identifying consciousness of the human being. Such practices do not lead to a permanent change in one's spiritual life, nor lead to soul consciousness. On the contrary, it reinforces the ego. What most people are seeking when they practice meditation or mindfulness is a connection to the divine through an enlightened consciousness. The Golden Rosy Cross offers a very simple message. You already have the key to achieving this state. You already hold it in your heart. The Golden Rosy Cross shows us that at the center of our being, of our small world system we inhabit, the microcosm, there lies a spark of the eternal divine realm that we can activate and its effect in our life if our ego-centeredness steps aside. The pupils of the Golden Rosy Cross allow growth of the new soul consciousness through a practice of lived Gnostic meditation. How? Well, we agree that it is important to create stillness in our emotional life, free from the astral turmoil of worldly forces. So firstly, we need to observe our emotions. And yes, it is important to observe ourselves and learn where our thoughts have arisen and where they are taking us to. So we need to secondly observe our thoughts. And we need to realize how we react to such impulses. Do we fight them? Do we embrace them? Or do we let them control our actions, always reacting to them? So thirdly, we need to observe the working of our will. But do these practices of observation alone allow us to enter into a soul conscious state? No. These actions only drive us on a horizontal point, similar to meditation and mindfulness. To reach a permanent connection with the divine realm, we need another step than where many meditation practices take us. We need to live from the impulse of the awakened spark of divine energy in our heart. This, what the School of the Golden Rosy Cross calls the spirit spark. Meditation and mindfulness can give us space for the spark to be active. But if we don't then live by it, we are restricting our spiritual life to the lower realm by not being connected to the spiritual consciousness of the all. So the fourth step we need to do is to examine whether the impulses from our feelings, thoughts, and will are in harmony with the resonance of the inner voice in our heart from the spirit spark. This is Gnostic meditation. If we acknowledge the impulse from the spirit spark and allow ourselves to act from the resonance it imparts. The Gnostics call this the other one, and we have to allow it, that resonance of the spirit spark in the center of our being, to work within us.
When we have attained this insight, then there emanates from our heart the longing for salvation, for a path that will bring us to a good end. Each human being possesses a divine element in his or her being. Seeking for the light cannot be imposed, but comes from a burning desire for truth, light, and love. Self-knowledge is the first step on this path of opening to the inner light that is hidden in our hearts. Purification then follows with the birth of the new soul, with our whole being surrendering to that inner being, here and now. At this point on the path, the pupil is prepared to surrender their egocentricity to the greater good, to the goodness that is already within you, not as a possession of your lower self, not as a character or attribute of your personality, but as your inner essence. The inner essence, to begin the process, the candidate must offer up his earthly personality. That is, he must stop living selfishly for the self and instead live for others. To serve the self is against everything the Gnosis represents. God, the Logos, the only good, gives to all. God does not take. If one is looking to re-link with the divine, one must reflect that single attribute of the divine, for only like attracts like. The Cathars, a spiritual community that lived in the south of France in the 12th and 13th centuries, referred to this self-surrender as the endura, a daily dying to the things of this world. It is probably the most difficult part of the entire process, because the self will not easily relinquish its control or its desires. Through weakness and uncertainty, the candidate will falter time and time again, yielding to selfishness, but he must persevere and weather all storms. He must remember that it is not he who will fight this battle against the self, but the universal light, the other one within, stepping forth from the opening rose, gaining in power and might with each passing moment. This results in a new attitude of life, a state of consciousness that we can be in at any moment and which we long to be in at every moment. This is Gnostic meditation, letting the other one work within us, from the spirit spark at the center of our being, as a process in which the essence of God or truth is silence, and whoever seeks this truth is progressively silent. True silence is a dimension of the rose or the divine soul that cannot be perceived by our sensory organs. This silent space of pure consciousness is called the human being. We have to learn to uncover it within ourselves by removing all outer noise. This happens within a process of getting to know ourselves, to understand where our noise stems from. It is, for instance, our fears, worries, and judgments, ensuring that through thought and action, we maintain the noise in and around us, causing circles of experience and often much suffering. Through lack of knowledge, many consider their egoistic impulses and desires as their highest purpose, and therefore remain caught up in their own web. Thus, the distance from the divine silent inspiration increases. The spiritual essence is then kept imprisoned within the conditioned personality. This way lies open for all who can silence through neutrality the unrest in their hearts and heads, and allow the silent voice of the rose to speak. Hence this path begins in the point of contact with the heart. The voice of the silence will then show the seeker the way. The divine influences penetrate the qualities of the personality and ultimately replace them during the purifying process. So, everyone who is able to open up to this path of conscious surrender to the spiritual principle in the heart will receive clear insight into their self and the universal laws of life. At first, the voice of the silent is a quiet whisper of conscience, but as there is more cooperation, this voice is distinguished in greater clarity. As the Gnostic path progresses, the human being reacts less to the opposites of this world. The processes of the ego, which oscillate between both poles of contrasting earthly existence, that there is an experience of radiations of power of eternity, the divine speaker. In the realization of this goal through surrender, we discover the difference between what is necessary in life and what isn't. This inner development gives us the power of discernment, and as our self-knowledge deepens, we will eventually be able to become silent as to our egoistic desiring and willfulness. Then, in that inner space, liberated from emotional charges, we can speak the words, "Not my will, but your will be done."
This slide here talks about to enter the reality of the now and submit to the other one within you with the thought of your will be done. It's been discussed by Andrew and Nari. So far we have talked about the path, the process, the 6 steps leading to liberation. We know that man in his current state of being has 3 paths open to him: culture of the personality, splitting of the personality, and transmutation or transfiguration of the personality. So based on the spiritual law of he who loses his life for my sake, meaning the spiritual, will find it, we now know that all efforts driven from the I-centered personality can only achieve either a culture or a splitting activity, neither of which can liberate the microcosm, but can only be active within the vibrational limits of this world. They cannot escape the laws of reincarnation and karma. We also know that within man there is a divine remnant, a dormant spiritual principle, what we call the rose of the heart, within which lies the true spiritual potential of man, his link to his divine past. This spiritual principle must be awakened, and through this awakening, a process of transmutation, of transfiguration, is guided by the spiritual light it attracts. It is fed, stimulated, and guided to its reawakening by the Gnostic light that vibrates from beyond the laws of this world. For like attracts like. But this process is influenced not by what we contribute, but how effectively we can step aside and not hinder the process. Again, he who loses his life for my sake, for the true spiritual life, shall find it. Hence, in Gnostic meditation, we also talk about bringing our thoughts, emotions, and will down to a biological minimum in order not to hinder the process of spiritual rebirth. As I is able to step aside to quieten its activity, and here we have discussed the sevenfold process involved, so a new soul activity is born and develops within us and slowly begins to take direction of the whole system that we call the microcosm. This new soul will slowly bring a new consciousness into being. And just like the drop of water that is absorbed into the ocean, so our existing consciousness is merged into the cosmic consciousness, a divine consciousness that has no center, no I, but is diffused throughout the microcosm and is connected to all of life. Slowly, the whole system is transfigured until a point is reached when we talk about the microcosm and the conscious soul life within it being freed from the bonds that tie it to this nature order, the laws of reincarnation and karma, so that once again it returns to and participates in the divine life. We are then able to say, the prodigal son has returned.